Hello again, boys and girls. Yesterday in our literacy lesson we did some description about a fox, and the reason we did that is because we're going to be looking at a new Roald Dahl text today which features a fox. So in our literacy lesson today, our objective is we're going to be seeing if we can ask questions to help us research. To be successful in today's lesson, we're going to see if we can make sure we understand the difference between a statement and a question, remembering that statements are just saying things and questions are things which you want to know about. I can think of ideas of things that I would like to find out. That's going to help us to write any questions we need to write. To use appropriate punctuation to ask and answer questions, so making sure that we put the correct punctuation in when we're asking and answering questions. And I can effectively research to answer questions. We may need to actually find out the answer to these questions, so we need to work out how we're going to do that. So, as I said, first of all, we're going to be reading a new text, and this text is called Fantastic Mr. Fox. There's Fantastic Mr. Fox on the front cover. And while we're reading this chapter, we're going to read chapter 2 and chapter 3, because chapter 1's not about the fox. Chapter 1's about the evil farmers who want to catch the fox. I want you to think about, do you think that foxes are like this in real life? And what things would you like to find out about foxes, if anything?
Chapter 2, Mr. Fox. On a hill above the valley there was a wood. In the wood there was a huge tree. Under the tree there was a hole. In the hole lived Mr. Fox and Mrs. Fox and their 4 small foxes. Every evening, as soon as it got dark, Mr. Fox would say to Mrs. Fox, "Well, my darling, what shall it be this time? A plump chicken from Boggis, a duck or a goose from Bunce, or a nice turkey from Bean?" And when Mrs. Fox had told him what she wanted, Mr. Fox would creep down into the valley in the darkness of the night and help himself. Boggis and Bunce and Bean knew very well what was going on, and it made them wild with rage. They were not men who liked to give anything away. Less still did they like anything to be stolen from them. So, every night each of them would take his shotgun and hide in a dark place somewhere on his own farm, hoping to catch the robber. But Mr. Fox was too clever for them. He always approached the farm with the wind blowing in his face, and this meant that if any man were lurking in the shadows ahead, the wind would carry the smell of that man to Mr. Fox's nose from far away. Thus, if Mr. Boggis was hiding behind the chicken house number 1, Mr. Fox would smell him out from 50 yards off and quickly change direction, heading for chicken house number 4 at the other end of the farm. "Dang and blast that lousy beast!" cried Boggis. "I'd like to rip his guts out," said Bunce. "He must be killed," cried Bean. "But how?" said Boggis. "How on earth can we catch the blighter?" Bean picked his nose delicately with a fine finger. "I have a plan," he said. "You've never had a decent plan yet," said Bunce. "Shut up and listen," said Bean. "Tomorrow night we will all hide just outside the hole where the fox lives. We will wait there until he comes out. Then, bang! Bang, bang, bang!" "Very clever," said Bunce. "But first we shall have to find the hole." "My dear Bunce, I've already found it," said the crafty Bean. "It's up in the wood on the hill. It's under a huge tree." Chapter 3, The Shooting. "Well, my darling," said Mr. Fox, "what shall it be tonight?" "I think we'll have duck tonight," said Mrs. Fox. "Bring us 2 fat ducks, if you please. 1 for you and me, and 1 for the children." "Ducks it shall be," said Mr. Fox. "Bunce is best." "Now do be careful," said Mrs. Fox. "My darling," said Mr. Fox, "I can smell those goons a mile away. I can even smell one from the other. Boggis gives off a filthy stink of rotten chicken skins. Bunce reeks of goose livers, and as for Bean, the fumes of apple cider hang around him like poisonous gases." "Yes, but just don't get careless," said Mrs. Fox. "You know they'll be waiting for you, all 3 of them." "Don't you worry about me," said Mr. Fox. "I'll see you later." But Mr. Fox would not have been quite so cocky had he known exactly where the 3 farmers were waiting at that moment. They were just outside the entrance to the hole, each one crouching behind a tree with his gun loaded. And what is more, they had chosen their positions very carefully, making sure that the wind was not blowing from them towards the fox's hole. In fact, it was blowing in the opposite direction. There was no chance of them being smelled out. Mr. Fox crept up the dark tunnel to the mouth of his hole. He poked his long, handsome face out into the night air and sniffed once. He moved an inch or 2 forward and stopped. He sniffed again. He was always especially careful when coming out of his hole. He inched forward a little more. The front half of his body was now in the open. His black nose twitched from side to side, sniffing and sniffing for the scent of danger. He found none, and he was just about to go trotting forward into the wood when he heard, or thought he heard, a tiny noise, a rustling sound, as though someone had moved a foot ever so gently through a patch of dry leaves. Mr. Fox flattened his body against the ground and lay very still, his ears pricked. He waited a long time, but he heard nothing more. It must have been a field mouse, he told himself, or some other small animal. He crept out a little further out of the hole, then further still. He was almost right out into the open now. He took a last careful look around. The wood was murky and very still. Somewhere in the sky the moon was shining. Just then his sharp night eyes caught a glint of something behind the tree not very far away. It was a small silver speck of moonlight shining on a polished surface. Mr. Fox lay still, watching it. What on earth was it? Now it was moving. It was coming up and up. Great heavens, it was the barrel of a gun! Quick as a whip, Mr. Fox jumped back into his hole, and at that same instant the entire wood seemed to explode around him. Bang, 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 bang! The smoke from the 3 guns floated upward in the night air. Boggis and Bunsen Bean came out from behind their trees and walked towards the hole. Did we get him? Said Bean. One of them shone a flashlight on the hole, and there on the ground, in a circle of light, half in and half out of the hole, lay the poor tattered blood-stained remains of a fox's tail. Bean picked it up. We got the tail, but we missed the fox, he said, tossing the thing away. Poor Mr. Fox.
Did you enjoy those chapters? I hope you did. Now, do you think that foxes are like that in real life? Do you think that they're just like Fantastic Mr. Fox, or do you think that they might be a little bit different? I want to find out. And the way that we find out is by asking questions. We need to research and find out things. So, if I'm asking a question, what punctuation do I need to remember to include? You can see it on the board, can't you? I need to remember the question mark. The question mark shows that I'm asking something, that I want to find something out. So the way that I ask a question is by putting a question mark at the end. Here's my question that I want to know. What do foxes eat? You might want to know the answer to that question as well. But the way I would find it out is I would go to Google and find it out, like most people do. So if I go to Google and I type in the phrase, what do foxes eat, and click enter, sometimes it will come up with something like this where it straight away tells you the answer. Other times you might need to click on a link to find out the answer. But it says here they are expert hunters catching rabbits, rodents, birds, frogs and earthworms, as well as eating carrion. But they aren't carnivorous, they are actually omnivores, as they dine on berries and fruit too. Urban foxes will also scavenge for food in dustbins, and often catch pigeons and rats. Wow. So I found out the answer to the question by doing the research. Now I need to write down my own answer. I don't want to copy all of that because that's quite a long answer and I don't need to know all that information. So I need to take that and I need to write it down in my own answer. Obviously not making it up, but just putting it in my own words. So then I wrote the answer myself. I wrote, foxes are omnivores, which means that they eat a range of different things such as rabbits, earthworms, berries and other fruits. So I've used a key word there, omnivore, which means that it eats both plants and animals. I forgot what omnivore was then, silly me. And I also included some of the things that foxes do eat, like it said in the research that I did. So when you're asking the question, always need to try and find out the answer as well by doing a little bit of research. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to come up with 5 questions of things that you'd like to find out about foxes. Remember, when you're writing those questions, you need to use the correct sentence punctuation, and after that you should then try to find out the answers by doing a little bit of research. If you've got a book at home about foxes, then fantastic, you can use that. If not, you'll probably just have to rely on Google. When you finish writing down your questions and answers, come back to this and we'll write our open together. So our objective today was asking questions to research. And for our next step, were you able to understand the difference between a statement and a question? If somebody said to you, what is a statement, what is a question, would you be able to tell them that? If not, make sure you can work on that because it's something very important. Were you able to think of your own ideas for research and things that you wanted to find out about foxes? Were you able to use appropriate punctuation when you were writing your questions with your question mark and when you were writing your answers with just regular capital letters and probably full stops? And were you able to effectively research to answer questions? Maybe that's something you need to do a little bit more work on, but maybe you've had a good start today.